Hello, this is Miss Poor, and right now I'm going to do a recording for the Unit 1 test review. This will be for Part 1 and Part 2. So it's test time. This is going to be our first test this semester, and there's going to be two parts to the test. The first part is going to be computer graded, and you will be doing that within your LMS. You'll just click on the test and begin it. I believe you have an hour to finish it, but if you do not close out the test, you will have all the time you need. If you close the test, you will not be able to re-enter it. So, for instance, if you have the test open and you've been working for 55 minutes straight, you can keep on working in it as long as you want, but the minute you close that test, you won't be able to get back into it. So the second part is going to be teacher graded, and that you will actually submit to me through the Dropbox. I will grade it, and I will do my best to get it graded within 3 days and get it back to you. Now you need to make sure that you go through the review lesson in the LMS. If you're in Geometry 203A and 204A, this will be lesson 1.17, and it's called Your Choice. As you go through the lesson, they will give you examples to work through and talk about specific concepts. If you're in 202A, then your unit review will be lesson 1.18, and as I just said, you go through there and you click on the links, and they will give you little concept reviews and examples to work out to make sure you understand the material. Now, I've talked to you about this before, and these slides are going to be available in Doc Sharing, and there are other slides in Doc Sharing that give you this information. This is how you complete the Part 2 test. The first thing you're going to do is print the test. You're going to complete it showing all your work. This is mandatory for all math problems on all Part 2 tests. Whether the instructions tell you to show your work or not, it is mandatory that you show your work. Don't just give me an answer. If it says construct A, which you're going to be doing on this Part 2 test, you need to include the construction with the test. Computer constructions will not be accepted. They must be done by hand. And again, if it says to graph something, computer graphs are acceptable, and actually in this Part 2 test I give you a link to a video that shows you how to do graphing in OpenOffice or Microsoft Word. If it says to create a drawing, which you don't have one in this Part 2 test, but you will in the future, you need to complete the drawing by hand and include it with the test. If I suspect plagiarism or cheating, you will receive a 0. All cheating falls under the title plagiarism in K-12 TXVA. So if I send you a plagiarism notice, that just means you cheated on the test. Okay? When you have completed the test, you scan it or take pictures and submit to the respective Dropbox. They will not be accepted in Doc Sharing or Kmail. If you take a picture of your construction or your graph, you need to take that picture and paste it into the test document. Do not send it separately. Then you need to save your files properly. A file name that indicates which assignment it is, followed by your first initial and last name. And you can see where I've done an example here for Robert Smith. It looks like he was working on Unit 4, Lesson 3. Here's a brief overview of topics you should make sure to review and practice problems you should make sure you understand before you take the unit test. The first is planes, points, and lines and their intersections. Know whether, like, the intersection of lines is a point, the intersection of a plane is a line. You can go through and review your basic geometric terms and definitions problem set. The next thing you need to know and understand are postulates, hypotheses, and theorems, and also definitions and how they all relate to each other, and exactly which ones are you going to be able to use in a proof. You need to know how to find the midpoint and length of a line segment, And you need to know the segment addition postulate and how to apply it, and practice on this using the measuring length problem set. You also need to know how to measure an angle and how to classify the angles. And remember, to measure an angle is using a protractor, so you need to be able to use one of those to determine angle measures and then be able to classify the angle based on its measure. You need to understand and recognize angle pairs such as complementary and supplementary. And in addition to that, you need to know what is the sum of complementary angles? What is the sum of supplementary angles? You need to be able to identify a linear pair and be able to give its definition. You need to be able to recognize adjacent angles. And you can practice all of this by working on the angle measurement problem set. You also need to know the angle addition postulate and how to apply it, and this seems to be one of our weaknesses in Unit 1 this semester. And you also need to know what an angle bisector is. You also need to be able to recognize parallel and perpendicular lines and know their definitions. Be able to go through and work the bisectors and line relationships problem set. You really need to know about triangles, circles, and centers. This will be on your Part 2 test. Understand which lines you can use to find the end center, which is angle bisectors, the lines you need for circumcenter, which happens to be perpendicular bisectors of the triangle, and a centroid, which is actually the intersection of the medians of a triangle. And you need to be able to identify them in a picture. Understand which points are the center of a circle, which would be your incenter and circumcenter. Centroids are not the center of a circle. You need to know the relationship between triangles and circles. I'm sorry, I was just reading and not paying attention to what I was reading. You need to practice these types of problems by working the problem sets that is on the relationship between triangles and circles. You also need to know about transformations, the classifications and applications of transformations, be able to identify what type of transformation was performed given a picture. And there again, you need to practice this by looking and reviewing and working the problems in the transformations problem set. And as I said, you're going to get concept reviews and examples in lesson 117 or 118 depending on which course you're in. You also need to know about the coordinate plane, ordered pairs, and what does isometry mean, and that would be all found in the algebra to describe geometry problem set, as will transformation and mapping rules. I also have transformation rules posted in doc sharing that you may use when you're taking the test. Those are included in notes that you can use when you're taking the test. The difference between isometric, non-isometric transformations, that will be a question on the Part 2 test. Make sure you practice your constructions with the compass on paper, since you're going to have to do one for the test, the Part 2 test. You should be able to do the following constructions by hand with the compass and straight edge. Construct a line perpendicular to another line at a point. Construct a perpendicular bisector. Bisect an angle, and construct parallel lines. The teacher graded section must be submitted through the Dropbox. Download the test document and save it to your computer. Usually the best place to save it so you'll be able to find it is on your desktop. Many of the answers you will need to be done by hand, so that way you can just scan your document and turn it in. I believe only two of the problems, actually only one problem needs to be done by hand. That's the construction. The other problem is graphing, which you can do with your computer, and the remainder problems may all be typed on your computer. You do not have to handwrite those and scan them. The only one that I'm worried about you doing by hand will be the construction, and that's what you will need to scan. Make sure to save the file with the right name, which I told you earlier. Just ignore how it's done right here on this slide. I'm flipping right through it. And some people get pretty stressed when it comes time to take a test, and I have some tips for you that are in Doc Sharing on the main page of Doc Sharing. It's called Test Anxiety, is in the title. So be sure to read through that if tests stress you out. And then I'm going to suggest after you do that, just bang your head here in this circle. That usually helps things. Okay? I just want to wish you luck on the test, and if you have any questions while you're preparing the test, just let me know. I believe your test will be on Monday, the 22nd, and again, I wish you all the luck. Thanks for listening.